Hello and welcome to today's episode of Courage Permission Slip. I, of course, am your host, Kia, and today I am so happy to welcome my friend Liz Lapp to the show. And before we dive in, I want to tell you just a teensy bit about her. Liz owns Liz Lapp Consultancy, surprise, where she is a social media consultant for Fortune 500 companies, startups, and individuals. She is an agent of change for hire. I love that so much. And she is the host of the Hoops Talk podcast, which is a weekly interview and analysis style women in sports show. Liz, welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you are here.
Thank you for having me. It's such an honor for you to invite me to come on this show. When I saw that you were doing this, I was so excited for you. And I know in our background, how we met, and this just seems like the perfect evolution. So I'm so happy to be here and speak with you today.
Awesome. Thank you. And so for you listener, you know that I have a lot of friends that are in the marketing world or have been, and they've come in and out. So this is all of these conversations are so very much full circle moments. And to that point, Liz, you know, the thing that I loved so much about your bio and was a little surprising to me, because I mean, I know it just from being friends with you. I know how much you love art and all things in the arts world. And, you know, before you really made your mark as a social media consultant, a social media branding consultant, you know, you had a lot of experience, like extensive experience in the art space, not only being that photography gallery director, but then also making the move to found your own gallery. And so I would love to hear a little bit about like what drew you to that and what that experience was like for you.
Yeah, it's funny that experience was a while ago now, and I don't usually have that on my resume. You know, it's in my LinkedIn, but as I've moved forward, it hasn't. It's made people curious, but it hasn't really been like the thing that people really talk to me about. So I'm excited to share that story. I moved to New York after meeting my husband, he was my boyfriend at the time, and I went to New York for love. And I had no friends, no job, no family in New York. I have friends there, and I'd visited a couple of times, but to actually make a cross-country move with very little insurance that even this relationship was going to work out. Luckily it did. And I just did it. I was at a point where I just was saying yes a lot to a lot of things that just felt right. You know, I was just saying yes. And I had worked at a gallery in San Francisco. I was an archivist there. And I fell into that in a whole, like I went to buy a piece and then ended up working with them. We had a long evening of wine that ended up with me with a job at the gallery. So, you know, I was in New York and I didn't have a job and I was struggling. You know, I moved in November and it was cold. I had never understood snow in a city, trying to work and live in a city. I mostly knew it in Tahoe, you know, being California. You go ski trips, you don't go to the bodega with snow boots on. So it was a struggle. I cried a lot. And one day my boyfriend, who's my husband, now he's my husband, he said, you need to stop crying, you need to get friends, and you need to get a job. And you just need to do it because I'm tired. And it was so shocking. I was shocked.
I feel that in my chest right now.
Yeah, seriously. I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this person just told me this. So I went to bed. I cried for, you know, the full day, and I woke up the next day and I went job hunting, and I found a gallery that was hiring. They were a Los Angeles based gallery, and they had opened a space in Dumbo, which at the time was not the Dumbo that you know today. It had a peas and pickles one bagel shop, which I actually think was a drug front because the bagels were not very fresh. I feel like it was like some sort of like there was a gambling room in the background. And I would have to take I was living in the Upper West Side, so I'd have to take the 2 trains downtown to Brooklyn and, work at this gallery. I met the current director, and then she was also going. She was Californian. Had come to New York, and one day she just. I mean, I got the job right away. We clicked, and I started working as her assistant. And then I started helping like curate some shows and put some stuff together. One day she comes in and she was like, I decided I'm going to move to Australia with my boyfriend. Remember that one I told you about? I'm like, I think you told me about it. Like, I didn't know. So she's like, so I don't know what's going to happen in the gallery. So I'm like, okay. So then the next day it was like, hey, Liz, you're the director of the gallery. You'll be curating shows. And I'm like, okay. So I took that seriously. I didn't just take it as like, hey, this is a space for me to sit in with my laptop and be on Wi-Fi. And I really started going out and talking to the other galleries in the spaces that we were in this building. I created the internship program where I got some young photography students or art students. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I had worked in advertising prior to moving to New York, which also was part of my, crushing downfall in life, because advertising is tough. It really just it did a number on me. Plus the fact that I had gone through a very, very the divorce was had gone through a divorce, and it was very like debilitating, going through all of that. And through a lot of therapy and a lot of support, I got to to the point where I did meet my husband and then move to New York. So I kind of was like, I love art myself. I love books. I'm into culture, which is funny because I come from a very small town. I come from Watsonville, California. It's actually Freedom. Most people don't know Freedom, but Freedom. And I am first generation, but I had, my grandmother had 7 children. So I had a lot of inputs of different times of culture that were, shared with me, and especially in vinyl records, in movies, a lot of movies. And we all did things together. So, everyone, like when we go see a movie, everybody goes see the movie. Sure. So I had a lot of those inputs already, but I was a very curious person. I lived in the library. Library was one of my safe spaces. And I would just get lost in the stories and the reading and the knowledge. And, so it was something that I was already built within me somehow. I didn't really have mentors or anything like that. It was growing up, it was mostly like finish high school, don't get pregnant, those types of goals. And or go to college, hopefully, being one of the first to go to university. And so a lot of that comes into play, I think, with how I looked at the gallery. I was like, I want to create a space where people feel comfortable and can have conversations and talk about art and, not be scared about asking questions, and not everything's about like, is it going to sell? Yes, that's important because we want to pay rent and we want to pay our employees. And but I was more about experiences and how I create those experiences and how I do that in New York. Like New York is a happening 24/7. And I mean, as far as me being in the art world, I'm even hesitant to say that I'm in the art world because like it is such a guarded, gated world, the art world in general. And then in New York, a very guarded, gated community. And you just have to be.
Well, and Liz, can I ask you about that, about like the guarded gated, because when you so it feels to me, it feels intimidating, right? Because I'm like, I don't consider myself an art person at all.
Sure.
And so not only are you, this is after your boyfriend, now husband, was like, you got to get a job. And then you just, you just go, and without really, you have experience in your family and in your history. But in terms of running a gallery, really doing that work, that was all brand new to you. So I'm curious to hear, like, how did you, and then the woman who was the owner was like, I'm moving, so now you're going to run the gallery. And so I'm curious, like, did you even have time to be scared? Like, not only are you trying to make people who are coming in not be scared about the art experience, but you as a new gallery director and
Mhm.
curator, like, how did you deal with the scariness of that? Because like I said, it feels scary to me.
Yeah, I didn't think about it. Like, I was
Mm,
just in it. I was already just in it, and I had just took cues from the people around me,
mm,
and I because I absorb a lot of things,
mhm,
I was then able to translate that. And I think having the ability to just not think about it and just do it made other people just say, well, she must know what she's talking about, or she must know what
mm,
she's doing because she's just doing it. And so I
yeah.
think, and also I think about this a lot. I think about like times, the times that things happen, right? I didn't have, I mean, Facebook was a thing, but it was still, used more in college. It wasn't an app.
Mhm,
We didn't have
mhm,
apps. It was still
mhm,
very much, on your laptop. And so creating event spaces was brand new. And so I came in this time right before the big apps boom and the big, everybody has a curation online, and the website, everybody's doing their website for Squarespace. And it was a lot more of like, you got to go to places. You actually have
yeah,
to go to the place. You have to
mhm,
meet the person. And
mm,
I don't want to be that person that's like, back in my day, because my husband always makes fun of me for that. But what I just think that it's relative to your place
mhm,
in time. Right.
mm,
And I think that in my place in time for what I was doing, I was built to be a connector.
mm,
And for me, it was just about having that ability, take a subway anywhere, go to a opening, go shake hands, go face to face, make that connection. And that is something that, I think really helped me with the gallery in and making friends. Like, it's
yeah.
just been it's very natural for me to talk to people. I'm very curious. So I ask a lot of questions, and I'm not as judgmental. Like, I don't think, I mean, of course, as a teenager or growing up, you have whole judgments. But I think as I started going to New York, I'm like, I'm small time. Like, I'm like this, like
Yeah.
a pebble in the sand of New York. And so you have to let go of what, your judgments are going to be about situations or people that you
Mhm.
meet. And I think that we have to, well, I had, I normalize things that people might think are weird per
Mm,
se. And
mhm.
I try to also use my language to make it not be weird, because
Yeah,
I feel like if we normalize that, then it's not going to be weird.
yeah.
And, coming from that perspective.
And I love what you just said a moment ago about like releasing the judgment, because one
Mhm.
thing of, of people or the way that you think a situation is going to go or should go. And that's something that, and this is also timely, that's something that comes up quite a bit in conversations about like how rigid our thinking is
Mhm.
and um, how much pain and stress and strife that can cause us. And so I really love that you said that. And I'm curious how much of that learning from that time of where you were like, I didn't have time to be scared. I had just had to get out and do it. How much of that thinking and trying to normalize situations, as you
Mhm.
just said, how much of that are you applying to the things that you're doing today?
Oh, all the time. All the
Mm,
time, I would say, because as my own, as like a private consultant, or as someone that goes to look for work, you know i I don't try to pass judgment on what someone decides they want their work to be.
right.
it's it's less about me judging them and me applying my skills to help them. And it's also
Mm,
allowed me the flexibility to make judgment calls.
mm,
If I've worked in purpose driven social media, where you know, it was more about like, I want to make the change here, you know, especially during the time of COVID when we needed to get, before the vaccine, there needed to get word out about where you go get testing. So I worked campaigns across the country for that. I also worked on for the US Census, helping them spread the word for census. So it was more purpose driven. And so it allows me the flexibility to look at something that may not be for me. Like I've worked with a football analyst as a private consultant to her, and I don't like football. You know, so those are the things. And I think I learned that too from in advertising. You know, I didn't like Hidden Valley Ranch, but that was one of my clients. And one day I was in a board meeting and they're like, well, Liz, what do you think about the new, you know, flavor? And I'm like, I don't know. My family ate salsa, so I don't really know Hidden Valley Ranch. And I was honest.
Yeah.
You know, and so now you see all this like spicy Hidden Valley Ranch, all these salsa stuff, right? Because there needs to be someone in the room that is going to take that step to be honest. And if you let off like that, you're not going to judge someone because of what they're saying or how they're doing something, then I think there's a lot of give and take there. And I learned that too for sales, like going back to the gallery. You know, a lot of people will ask like why they want to buy a piece, but they're afraid to buy the piece. And I think the way that it's been structured is that you buy for resale, therefore you want to know if it's going to have value in the long run, in the long term. And it's like, unless you're a billionaire, that your dividends on like some of this work is not going to hit like you think. I know what you see in, you know, TV or whatever is a lot of people that'll buy like fast yachts and, you know, big time blue chip. But if you're a private art collector or someone that wants to be in art and enjoy art, a lot of times I just have to tell them, well, you have to live with it. So do you want to wake up every day having this hanging and being okay with seeing it? You know, there's certain pieces even in my home that my husband's like, you can't hang that in the bedroom. I don't want to wake up to see that in the bedroom, you know? So we go back and forth with even our own private collection. And that is something that you're like, okay, you know, whatever your investment is, whether it's $20 or 20,000, what is the true value for you to live with that piece? And also sometimes, you know, you can say like, okay, well, what is the artist's background? Will that help you make a decision? Will, you know, do they need to be, you know, from a certain group of artists or certain gender-based artists, or what is their message? So, you know, there's a lot of other things besides just, you know, I want to buy this because I know it'll be $10,000 when the artist dies or something. There's a lot of those conversations. The money in art world is like that. And so, you know, to be able to not judge someone that wants to come in and ask questions about art, and also be empathetic to like, you know, price points and what their style is and what they're looking for, really helped me with sales at the gallery and helped me to inform my interns on like, okay, you know what, it doesn't matter that we may not like this photography that we're seeing, but if they like it, you know, let's lean into that. So that was really helpful from like a sales point of view. And that a lot of times came from advertising, which I would have to do a lot of focus groups. And we would actually go to people's homes to watch them barbecue, because Casey Masterpiece was one of my clients as well at the agency. And it's just a different world you have to be able to step into and kind of morph yourself and listen and be curious about. And if you're judgmental going into those spaces, then you're not going to really learn anything. So it's not really going to be worth it.
And so, I mean, with your varied experiences, there are so many places where you have had to have courage, right? Like the courage to speak up at the boardroom table to say, you know, I don't eat that. And I'm, you know, since we're talking about courage permission slip, I would love to hear from you, from all of your experiences, you know, how has that informed what your definition of courage is?
I've thought about this a lot because I know you sent me some like pre-work, and just in thinking about what courage is it's there's so many things I thought of, and really it all came back to one thing, and that really is trust. Like, I really find trust is courageous. And I think I fell on that because all the different examples that I was looking at to understand what courage is, at the end of the day, I had to trust. You know, whether it was my intuition, I had to trust my intuition. Whether it was reaching out for help, I had to trust that that support would be there in a way that was not a trade-off type of support. I had to trust that the timing of being, you know, let go from a job, or trust the timing of a pitch coming in or putting out a pitch was the right time. Trusting my husband to, you know, be able to, you know, say like, hey, you know, I'm in between gigs, or I'm going to do this or that, you know. There's so much, and I have trust issues. You know, I have generational trauma. I've been dropped. So, you know, at the end of the day, though, the things that were successful, even it doesn't matter, like success metrics are going to be different. So it wasn't necessarily that it was the biggest deal or the big prize. It was more that I had the ability to trust something and see it through to whatever its eventual path or ending was going to be. And when I open myself up to that trust, it just allows you to just keep going and pivot and be nimble and do all the things that you need to do, and sit with it for a while, and trust if you're going to be sad or if it's going to be happy. I mean, there's just so much that you have to do in trusting yourself or others.
And so that you know, this, I don't think this is an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to say it. I don't think that, because the type of trust you talk are like the internal trust, like you said, trusting your intuition, but then also trusting others. And my feeling is that people are more willing to trust other people than they're willing to trust themselves, trust their own intuition, trust their own voice, trust their own opinions or feelings about a situation, which then, you know, there's a ripple effect, because when you're not trusting your intuition, or your own voice, or listening to your own voice, it creates all these other circumstances that create more discomfort and pain. And I'm curious to hear from you, what's a moment where you really had to struggle with trusting your own intuition, listening to your own voice?
I think it was when I had to, well, one, because I'm sure there's many points in my like zigzag career, but I think trusting that it was the right time for me to be let go of working at Yahoo Verizon at the time. I was digging my heels in there, and I knew it was a wrong fit. And I refused to listen to my intuition. I refused to listen to it, because in my mind, my entire worth was based on that role, that name, that, you know, everything that I built there. And I was very disconnected from my like intuition and what my head and my heart, gut, and all that stuff was very disconnected. And when the day came that I was told, like, thank you so much, but this is the day, I cried a lot. I cried and cried and cried. And I was just, you know, what is my worth now if I don't have these things in my life, right? And then that's where I realized, how is this your life? You know, how did you allow this to be the only thing that gave you worth in your life? And it was a shock. it was shocking. It was so shocking and
Yeah.
so abrupt.
Yeah.
And that was one where I took a year off from work. I was
Mhm.
fortunate because I had support. Again,
Mhm.
I had to
Mhm.
trust that everything was going to be okay. I was going to trust that,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and really unlocking again, not being judgmental, you know, and not
Yeah.
and being okay with okay, what's going to come next? What's going to be in my life? And you and I were
Mhm.
real. I mean, you really came into my life around that time as well, when I was struggling with what the
Mm.
heck am I going to do? What is my purpose? What is my
Yeah.
meaning?
Mm.
And stepping back and just reassessing a lot of things. It takes a lot of courage. It took, and
Yeah.
I probably stayed a year longer than I should have, as far as like mental
Mhm.
health and
Mhm.
health all
Mhm.
around. And it was a super toxic environment.
Yeah.
But then again, you always have that thing where you're like, no, 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 it's gonna get better if I just stick it through. You know, if I
All the
just stick it through,
rationalizing.
yeah, you
Mhm.
know, I can make it. And you know, it was not. It was a very toxic environment. And I don't want to say like I take accountability for what I brought to the table as far
Yeah.
as it being an you know, just not workable, you know.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I take accountability for
Yeah.
that. And it's business at the end of the day. So,
Right.
you know,
Right.
what was done is done. And
Right.
I'm much happier for it. I'm much happier for it.
And it's like you had to, this is, and this comes up a lot of, are you going to choose change or are you going to wait until change is forced upon you? Right. And
Yeah.
for most people, they have to be pushed to the edge, right? They
Hmm.
have to be
Yeah.
pushed off the ledge versus choosing it. And, you talked about how you realizing how much of your worth and your identity, and that comes up a lot for so many people who have been laid off, where there's been a
Hmm.
reorg or a restructure.
Hmm.
And people who have been at jobs or at companies for half their careers, right? And that
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
their identity and their feeling of worth. And I'm curious to hear from you, so when the shift happened, right, and
Hmm.
the abruptness and how heartbreaking that was for you, even though you knew you stayed too long,
Yeah.
how did you start the process of rebuilding your
Hmm.
worth and finding your purpose and discovering what your worth truly is, independent of a job or a title? How did you do that?
Um, well, I think we immediately went to vacation. I hadn't had one in a really long time. So immediately went somewhere sunny by a pool with a drink. Um, you know, I think that helped to just like release some of the anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to, it took a long time. I was talking to my therapist who had, you know, prior to when that day happened, told me, you need to leave. Like, you're not understanding what you need to
Yeah.
do. And, you know, I rationalized it for so long. So she'd been telling me for like months now that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and she kept questioning what really is going to happen if you leave, you know. And I couldn't understand that question. I couldn't understand that. So I think, you know, it took me at least three months maybe of just trying to unwind. I was still getting calls from people that were in the organization, you
Yeah.
know, and I was still, and even after, like, so much disbelief. How could this happen to you? You were, you know, so there was a lot of anger, and there was a
Mm.
lot of like, justice had not been served. You know, there's so much of that happening. And you have to go through it and just like, that's, what do they say, like the only path forward is through it. So I
That's
had to
right.
go through it.
Yeah.
And once I accepted, like, this is not this is not it anymore. You're not working there. These
Mm-hmm.
aren't your
Mm-hmm.
problems, you know. And I
Mm-hmm.
had to tell some people, I'm like, you know what, I wish there was something I could do, but if you choose to stay there, that's something that I can no longer help you with because I'm not in there anymore,
Yeah.
you know, and
Right.
you need to find a different leader or a different, you know, person internally that's going to be able, because at that point they're just bitching at me and I'm trying to get past this, right? So I, you know, it took like at least 3 months, and then I just just blissed out. You know, I
Mhm.
got back into the things that I like. That I tend to like dabble in so many different things, and then, you know, whatever, let it go, and just have experiences, which I love, and I'm very curious, and traveling and getting to cook. I mean, there's just so many things that I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this now. I can go to a museum in the middle of the day, or I can go like, and you know, and it helped to reset my balance, my work-life
Yeah.
balance. And I think I went to career coaching, which is something that they provided.
Mhm.
It was a transition career coaching, because that's the other thing too, you know, living in a certain industry or a certain space for so long, you forget how real people talk in different worlds,
Right.
you know, the language. And
Mhm.
I find that to be true in my consulting, because I'll be in meetings where they're like, oh, we need to do it this and that, and I'm like, again, I actually I don't work here, so I don't know what that means, but I'm happy to learn. I can do it. So, you know, like you start like to be very into the linguistics of what that particular company is or that job. And so I had to relearn, how do you just talk more general, how do you
Yes.
you know, so I did the transition training. When I first went there, I was very judgmental about it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like for losers, you know, what the hell is this?
Mm.
I have to, yeah, you know, it's, I'm being honest, you know, you're
Mhm.
just like still
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
raw from being let go from
Mhm.
like the head of a, you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
big business, and then you're in this room trying to like go over certain, you know, there's certain tasks that you have to do, and you're just like, this is so trivial, I cannot, I was dealing with billions and now you got me
Mhm.
doing like this weird chart, you know. So there's a lot of that. And when I finally was just like, why do you think you're better than anybody in this room? You
Mm.
know, why do you think that
Mm.
this person that is trying to help you, they don't need to, they're getting paid to try to do this, and if you're not going to accept it, then why are you even here, and why do you think you're better than these people?
Mm.
And that was just like, okay, enough,
Yeah.
you're having a tantrum.
Mm.
And I started to really accept that. And then I know you and I, we were paired, and we started talking, and it was a lot about structuring, you know, the things that I had loved, and how do I put that into my resume, and it just kind of flowed from there. But really it's
Yeah.
about like, you just like snapping out of this
Yeah.
place of, you know, I don't know, it was so weird. It just transformed me into somebody that I really wasn't at the end of the day,
Mm.
because of
Mhm.
how long I let it go. And then coming to terms with, you know,
Yeah.
this is what you need to do, and if you're not
Yeah.
willing to do it, then just go back to bed, because
Yeah.
you're not ever
Yeah.
going to absorb it. So
Right.
yeah.
And that is the point that people have to come to. It's like, I can either, and this is something that my coach and I talk about all the time. It's like, okay, you recognize that this isn't working, right? You
Mhm.
recognize that this is not serving you or whatever, whatever.
Right.
And you can decide to, continue to accept that and keep feeling the way that you're feeling, or you can do something about it. You can go a different direction, you can make a different choice, but this is your opportunity, right?
Hmm.
And there are some people who never make the decision, and then there are people that maybe they take a little bit of take longer than they probably should to make the decision. And there's some people that are like, okay, I'm gonna do this right now because I see where this is going if I
Yeah.
don't. But I
Yeah.
mean, but it's not easy to do it. It's not.
But you know, I love what you said when you said opportunity, because
Mhm.
that's really the switch, right?
Mhm.
Instead of seeing it as something that you are being forced to do because of whatever your situation is, if you really look at it as an opportunity and then just go for it,
Right.
however it pans out, really it's that switch of
Yes.
understanding it's an opportunity and going for it.
Right.
That's the spark. That is the
Yeah.
spark. You can't worry that oh, you're not going to get anything out of it. Like that's true
Mhm.
of, could be true of anything that you decide to do. You can go see a movie and decide, you know, and it could be really bad, but are you going to go in thinking I'm buying this ticket because, and it might be bad. You have to think of those. That's the key, is everything is an opportunity for you to walk in, and it's all dependent on how you walk in.
Yes. 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 The framing or the reframing is
Yes.
really, really pivotal, really pivotal.
Yeah. Yes.
So, Liz, you know, there, and we talked about this a little bit ago, where, you know, you were talking about how you didn't really, going back to the gallery, how you didn't have
Mhm.
an opportunity to be scared, right? You just had to jump in and like, okay, I got to do this, right? Like the ship is leaving.
Yeah.
And I'm curious for now, for where you are in this moment in time, are there any fears that are popping up for you right now? You know, little like voice in the back of your head that is just like, "Ooh, I don't know about this."
Right now I feel pretty balanced. Like
Mm,
I feel like I'm in the right space, and I feel I'm having the correct conversations with the people that I need
mm,
to continue
mhm.
to be in the space that I'm in. I wouldn't say that, you know, sometimes work is just work.
Yeah.
You know, work can just be work. It may not, you know, you wanted for everyone's like, oh, if you're passionate about your, I heard this recently, if you're passionate about your work, then it's not like it's work. Oh no, it's still work.
No.
It's still work.
And
It's
there's still,
still,
and you can still get burned out. If you're doing something that you
yeah,
love, you can still be burnt out. Let's
yeah, yeah, it's
normalize
very
that.
true. Yes,
Yeah.
very true, very true. And that happens to me, you know, even doing
Mhm.
something that I'm into. Um, I feel very balanced right now. I think it's a good space, but I'm always doing a check-in with myself. Like, how am I feeling? I've allowed myself to be much more in a space too where I communicate a lot, and I'm not afraid. Here's the thing: you can communicate, but it's about how you do it. If you go in with, you know, dropping f bombs and like cursing people out, then you're not. It doesn't matter what it is if you're right or wrong. It's more about like, okay, let's think about the person that you're talking to and what they're dealing with, and then how are you guys going to come together. And I think I've that's another thing I've learned, especially working at the gallery, and working with, you know, just out of thin air trying to figure things out. How, you know, how do I communicate what my needs are in a
Yeah.
way that is going to benefit everybody? And it's like, look, if this is what how it we can do this, then it would be better for you and me. It's like, you know, kind of, I don't
Mm.
know, just more collaborative. And so yeah, I don't know. I'm really, I mean, of course I have fear about, you know, future things as the world goes. I mean, there's a
Mhm.
lot of things in the world.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think as I'm aging, I also think about like, hey, you know, like what does retirement look like? When does that look like?
Mm.
Or what, you know, what I would say one of the biggest fears I do probably get is that if I feel something's going to get stale. I'm so swimming. I swim all the time. And when something starts to feel stale, I can tell it's just I have no love for it. It's like it's awful. It's like the worst feeling where you had to be like, okay, I think we need to end this. I'm tapped out. So yeah, those are those things where it's like, okay, if something becomes stale, but I'm still getting like I have a good income from something. How do
Mhm.
you work? And I think that also comes back from how I was when I was let go, that I didn't realize that it had been
Yes.
stale for a year. And I was just like all over it. That was another thing
Mm.
too. It's like it's it's like you don't even know your purpose anymore. That's what I
Yes.
guess I mean kind of with your when going stale, is that you're just not even like you're just grasping to make it still be something, and you
Yes.
start doing all these offshoots when you're like, okay, well, what is your actual role?
Mm.
And so,
Mm.
you know, I think like trying to be a generalist is good at some points, but it tends to like not being a specialist, at least you have like focus. And when you're a generalist, things can sometimes get stale. So I would say like my fear is just always, having that gut check to say like, hey, is this still the right, client? Am I still adding value to the client? Is the client still someone that I'm able to do something for, or, and those are, and I have those conversations, and we have those gut checks a lot of times with that. And that's why I kind of like being a consultant, because I'm able to, do 3 month, 6 month projects and reassess, and not, just have to know that every day I have to go and do something the same over and over again
Right.
until I want to scream.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I hear that. And so there's two interesting things that you said, that like really popped up for me. So one, I love that you're like frequently checking in with yourself, like really doing those gut checks, because what I have discovered is oftentimes people are worried or fearful of doing those gut checks with themselves because they're afraid of what they're going to discover on the other
Mhm,
side of the gut check,
mhm.
because then it makes it real. And then after it's real, then they have to make that decision. Like I was talking about earlier, of like, okay, am I going to do something about this, or am I just
Mhm.
going to be status quo? And and it's a muscle that has to be worked. And just because you realize something doesn't always mean you have to do something about it. But I'm interested to hear from you if there are ever those moments, and maybe when you first started doing this, are there ever those moments where you're a little reticent of what could come on the other side of the gut check?
Oh, all the time. All
Mm,
the time. Yeah, all the time. You know, when you're having to do a gut check, it's because you're already noticing something's wrong or something needs to be changed.
mhm,
When you start, you're
mhm.
like, okay, there's something not okay here. So it's like there's fear in opening, that up
Mm,
and taking a look.
mhm, mhm,
And a lot of times, what the good thing is that, at least for me, what I found is my gut check is usually something that is not shocking, right? Like I knew that was what was going to be on the other side. I just didn't want to have to face it.
mm,
And so I think, yeah, you should always be afraid, actually,
mm,
about what's going to be on the other side, because it
mm.
keeps you, aware,
Yeah.
makes you have those feelings. And I don't think people invest enough in themselves, to want to do that. I know a lot of people that are like, look, I don't like where I work, but I'm getting paid very well. I'm
Mhm,
like, yeah, okay, that's fair. That's
mhm,
fine. And I
mhm,
respect that.
mhm.
That will go away. And the minute that person or whatever institution you're working at decides that they're paying you too much and you're gone, what do you have? What do you have? What
Right.
have you done? What do you have? I'm not saying that's true for everybody, but that's what I found in
Right.
my journey.
Yeah. Mm.
I'm just speaking from my journey.
Yes. Yes. And this is the decision, right? Like you have to decide, am is this satisfactory to me?
Mhm.
Can I, you know, can I lay my head on my pillow at night, or can I look at myself in the mirror knowing that this is the decision that I'm making? And there is there is some strategy to some things
Mhm.
sometimes. Like sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. And there is a limit to that,
Yeah.
because when you um and I know we've talked about this, when you are like doing a lot of the mental gymnastics, right? Like that eventually it manifests into your body
Yes.
as chronic illness, panic attacks, which
Yep.
is, that has happened to me.
Yeah.
And one thing that I try to do is, just kind of do that cautionary tale of, okay, you can do this, but there is going to be a stopping point. And it's either
Yeah.
going to be your body is going to stop you, or there's going to be some other outside influence that is like, no, we're going to go a new direction. So,
Yeah.
But you're so right about the gut check and your intuition of already knowing that something is off. And now it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but it's not always going to be, even though it could be, it's scary, right? To see what's on the other side, as we're talking, but it doesn't mean that it's going to fall apart, right? It just means that you need to have the conversation with whomever it is that you're in business with, or your team, or your partner. That it just means it doesn't mean like this is over, it's the end. It just means that those conversations need to be had. And if you're in a place that is not going to allow you to have those conversations, or is not open to have those conversations, then do you really want to be there? Like, you got to think about those things as well. I think we undervalue how important it is for whomever we're working with to also be a partner in what it is, the work that we're doing. And we just think like, oh, we go in to 9 to 5, do our thing. We're getting, especially in like something like the tech world, which I worked in for a lot. It's like, there's only so much like free coffee and pizza Fridays that are gonna like make the difference of a horrible existence here.
Yes. 1000%. 1000%. So, Liz, you have dropped so many gems, and I would love to bottom line this, because there is someone listening to this who has an idea or a dream or a goal or vision on their heart, and they're not doing something about it because the fear is more important than the goal or the vision of what they want to be doing, or even how they want to feel, right? How they want to be experiencing life. And so what is your guidance? What's your advice for that person that wants that vision, but is letting fear be too big?
That's a great question. Because, a lot of times for me, it's just like, just do it. Just go do it. I mean, that's how I've fallen into things. And I'm not saying that that's right. It's messy. But I will say, from a more organized and like a structured point of view, that what I have found is that a lot of times when you're going through the activity of, are you going to do something, you'll talk a lot about the things that are going to stop you from doing it. So you'll say, oh, but then I won't be able to do this. And oh, but then I'll have to get up at this time. But oh, but then like, how will my husband do this? Or, oh, but then the car, you're already stacking up all the reasons why not to do something. So I think as a remedy to that, it's about starting to think about why you wanted to do it, and what are some like action items that you need to do to start reshaping the conversation, and really putting the work. That's the thing too. There's so much work. You're never going to have a job where you don't have a lot of work. Even if your own business owner, or you're an entrepreneur, or even the billionaires. That's why they're usually going through divorces, and their kids don't talk to them. I mean, can we talk about Succession? If anybody's watching that show, you see it's constantly working, and that there's fear there. And I think another thing too that's helped me is looking at what the structures have been put in place by the leaderships of this world, and however that have generalized what success metrics are, or how you're supposed to actually do things, and breaking away from that. I didn't go to business school. I went to art school and I was in advertising in art school. They actually had that. And so I have had to constantly challenge what the norms are to get to what I want. And I didn't go in going, well, I'm going to, put my fist on the boardroom. No. I just said like, okay, that's cool that that's how you did it, but this is how I'm going to do it. And we'll see what happens.
Right.
So I think, you have to like break away from what you think has been societal
Yes.
ways of how to get things done, and you have to start changing the dialogue of what it is that you want to do with the what's going to stop you, what's going to stop you, what's going to stop you, and just say, okay, let me just make a plan.
Hmm.
Let me focus on making a plan. Let me focus
Hmm.
on writing down what it's going to look like. Start visualizing it. Because no one's you can act, like I talked to my husband this morning about something that I wanted to do, and he's like, well, he gave me all this great feedback, and in the end I'm like, oh, I don't think I'm going to do it. So in the end it didn't matter, right? Because it was me, it was on me to make the
Yeah.
decisions. So you know, that's what I would do. I would start reframing it with okay, not talking about things that are going to stop you, and also not thinking, well, there's only one way to do things, because there's never one way to do things. And that could maybe help you to start opening up your path, start
Yes.
visualizing it in that way. And as I know, it sounds really like, well, that's not really, how do you do that? How do you start that? Yeah, that's a journey too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's worth it.
But to your point, you just have to start, right? Like you can keep spinning out. You can keep
Mhm.
like, oh, I think I want to do this. Oh, I want to do this. Oh, you can keep doing that, which all that time and energy that you spent like hemming and hawing, you could have just taken a piece of paper and written down, okay, here are 5 things that I think I need to
Right.
do to make this happen. Or maybe
Yeah.
here are 3 people that I can talk to, and here are 2 topics that
Yeah.
I want to Google to see about doing this, right? Like
Yep.
it takes the same amount of energy to spin out and bellyache than it does to actually get to it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you started out with just the thing of like, just do it, right? Like, just take a step.
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's funny because like I understand. I work in social media. So I understand how it looks so easy. You have now these influencers and you have all these things, but the thing is, an influencer has to work like every minute of the day. They are doing the work. They're
Mhm.
just, so I know it looks a certain way, but you have to understand that you have to put the work in, and everybody that does their own thing is going to have the same impediments, if you will, or structures that they need to do. You need to have your business license. You need to have, your, business plan. You need to pay rent, or you need to pay for your Wi-Fi, or you need to pay for the overhead, or you need to buy that book, or you need to join that club. Everybody has the same things. Yes, there are people that were born more with wealth in their family, who maybe
Mhm.
have that kickstart. So yeah, that's not fair. That's how
Mhm.
it is. But everybody has these things that are just basic to whatever it is that you want to do. So don't think about those are going to happen.
Yeah.
So, just think about, like, visualize what are the things that you want it to be, and then everything else just kind of will
Yeah.
will happen.
Yeah. And I like to say that a lot, like, don't get focused on the how. That will
Right.
kill your inspiration every time. Be in the energy of what it is that you're trying to create. Be in the energy of what you want to feel, what you want your experience to be. And that from that point, the inspiration and the ideas and the
Mhm.
people that you need to help you figure out the things that you need to figure out will start to appear. And that's not like woo woo,
Mhm.
hokey pokey stuff.
No.
It really is like because
Yeah.
you're changing the way that you're looking at things. You're
Yeah.
changing the way that you're thinking about this. And that's what, Wayne Dyer says that like when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. And
Yeah.
so if you can just start there with like, what's a different way to think about this?
Yeah.
then the steps start to present themselves.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, and still, validate that you have fear, and validate those things, and be like, okay, thank you very
yeah,
much. I
yes,
see you.
yes,
Let's take a little time out
yes. The
and
fear is
and
there
focus
for
on
a
these things.
reason. The fear is
Yeah.
there for a reason.
Yeah.
It's just shifting your relationship with it because you said this a little while ago, like fear it is good, right? Like you should have a little bit of fear. You should have a little bit of doubt, because that keeps you on your toes, right? You don't want to
Yep.
get too cocky and complacent, because then that's when you start missing things. But when
Yes.
you feel that fear, it's like, okay, that means there's something I should be paying attention to.
Yeah.
Oh, I should like be on my toes just a little bit more, but don't let it be so all encompassing, so overwhelming that it stops you, because you can overcome pretty much anything that comes your way. But it's just it's readjusting your relationship with the fear, because it's never going to fully go away.
Yeah, it's true. It's
Yeah.
true. And, and I think also adjusting your success metrics, I think is
Also
also
that.
really important.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
it's different for everybody. And I have happiness, and that's my success metric.
Yes, defining what success means to you is really key, because someone somewhere, leaders, dominant culture have put these things in place, but that doesn't work for everyone. That doesn't work for everyone that's not starting at the starting line, right? Like there's some
Yeah.
people, cultures, communities that are starting in the paddocks, right? They're
Yep.
starting in the parking lot.
Yep.
And so we
Yep.
have to adjust for that, and be aware of that and respect that, that not everyone has the same opportunities, and being willing to, take advantage of the opportunities that can come your way.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Liz, this, as always, I mean, our conversations are so fabulous, and this has been such a joy talking with you about so many important, inspiring topics. So thank you so much for being on the Courage Permission Slip. And I would love for you to share where people can get in touch with you and learn more about you.
Absolutely. I do have a website. It's lizlapp.com. I'm sure that needs to be updated. And you can always reach out to me at liz@lizlapp.com. That's my email. And I'm on all of the social media, Lizzie Lapp, Lizzie Ebe. You can probably Google search me and find me in those spaces. And we do have the Hoops Talk podcast. We're on a hiatus right now. One of our co-hosts had a baby, and the lovely baby boy, Karen, she had a baby. So we are giving her time to, get back into the swing of things, that being a new mom. And so, yeah, we do have that. We have some archival stuff, and hopefully we work on the next season, so you can find us there. But yeah, I'm happy to be on social with anybody, and or email me, and we can chat it up or something.
Wonderful. Well, I will include some ways to get in touch with you in the show notes. But again, Liz, thank you so much for this really rich conversation. I appreciate you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a joy.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you for listening and watching and following along on this version of Courage Permission Slip. Until the next time, we'll see you later.